Hello, welcome to vlog number 9, where I was asked to read chapter 7 of the Rhetorical Act and chapter 6 of Reading Pop Culture. So to start off with chapter 7 of the Rhetorical Act, chapter 7 is titled The Resources of Language, and within this chapter, language is defined as a symbol system in which we order our experiences and we assign meaning to them. So the textbook says that language has 3 primary dimensions. First is naming, which is the process by which we notice, recognize, and label certain elements or qualities in ourselves and in our world. So essentially, it's a process of ordering the world and of focusing our attention. And many do not label individual things, but they actually label categories of similar things. And there are also definitions that define the characteristics more than as naming something. So a definition specifies the essential qualities that something must have to be labeled in a way in a linguistic community. There's also denotation versus connotation. So denotation, which is the literal definition meaning, and connotation, which are associations of the literal definition meaning. And we learn from connotations of real life situations and not from dictionary meanings. Many times you will see this through marketing ads. They utilize connotations to invoke enthemes. For example, the textbook talks about Viagra commercials where it calls you call it erectile dysfunction instead of impotence, and it creates a different kind of vibe with that sort of language. So language is very effective in this way. There's also called loaded language, which are words that provoke strong feelings, and it is used heavily in politics. The second primary dimension is abstracting, which is leaving out details. It is the most basic kind which occurs within names. The most basic element of abstracting is omission, which is leaving out or ignoring details in order to treat different objects in similar ways. So basically, abstracting can be weak because it leaves out concrete details that make it harder to understand the context. But on the other hand, it can also be useful because it enables us to combine larger areas of experience, all while ignoring varied and complex detail. The third dimension is called negating, which is saying what something is not. So the quote, "thou shalt not," meaning there is a possibility of something not happening, which makes it more enticing to do it anyways. Negation is the basis for literal and figurative analogies, because we can recognize that they are not literally true. The next thing that the textbook talks about is style, which reflects the attitudes and character of the writer, and it also hints at the feeling about the subject. So it's similar to tone. There is formal or informal, which is when we speak and we make assumptions about what is appropriate given context. And there's formal, which is presidential addresses. Informal is also used as in a text message. We also have precision or ambiguity, which is precise language. It expresses ideas clearly and distinctly, whereas on the other hand, ambiguous language is open to more than one interpretation and it's pretty vague. Precise language is synonymous with empirical evidence and logical proof. We can also have style that is either literal or figurative. So figurative language defines the intangible qualities of experience to explain a difficult concept, whereas literal language is precise, but it's also less engaging. We can also have style as economy or redundancy. So economy of a language is avoiding wordiness and repetition, whereas redundant language is it's full of repetition, and it's most often used in an oral style to invoke feelings within the audience. Evaluating a style and deeming it as a good style means that it's clear, it's vivid, appropriate, and consistent. Next, the book talks about language strategies. And language strategies are plans of actions used to overcome obstacles of rhetorical situations, such as controversial issues or hostile audiences, which is more common than you think. So there are language strategies that are used to animate and vivify, and I'm just going to read a short description of each since there's a lot. Description: providing detail that makes a scene or object come to life and personify it. Enactment, which is the speaker or writer is proof of the claim that they are making. There's alliteration, which is repetition of an initial consonant. Many advertisers utilize this one. There's assonance, which is the repetition of vowel sounds. There's rhymes, which is very common in slogans. And there is parallelism, which is a strategy that creates rhythm in prose. Next, there are language strategies that are used to change connotations. So they attempt to change associations that we will find either more positive or make it more negative. So there is labeling, which is used to alter attitudes, aka debunking, or an example is calling undocumented workers. That's a much softer tone than saying illegal aliens. There's also slogans, which the American Dream or Just Do It by Nike, those invoke feelings. There's metaphors, which is comparing two things either figuratively or literally. There's allusions, which are items from shared cultures that are referenced. For example, Bibles, the Bible, Greek mythology, Shakespeare. And lastly, there is identification, which is the use of language to create positive associations between the reader and the audience. And that is pretty much it that was mentioned in the Rhetorical Act. So let's move on to Chapter 6 of Reading Pop Culture, which was titled, Movies, Does the Big Screen Still Shape Our Dreams? So I would like to start off with a quote that Osborne uses to summarize Chapter 6, and it says, Americans look to the big screen to work through their dreams and their nightmares, their ideals and their fears, and their collective sense of a cultural moment, past, present, and future. And that is on page 323. So all the paired essays in this chapter explore the ways that movies create myths, and it uses it in two different contexts. So for example, Sager's Creating the Myth, it reveals archetypal characters and mythical narratives that are referenced in many popular films. For example, there are allusions to Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Sir Edmund Hillary, and they are compared to our willingness to follow their journeys with the filmmaker's eagerness to follow the myth archetype, thus utilizing metaphors as well. There's also parallelism, and it is used to connect the myths and the archetypal characters, such as the wise old man with many of the popular films that are alluded to, such as Star Wars, Ghostbusters, Witness, The African Queen, and the book, or the essay mentioned many more, but that was just an example. The last paired essay by Gates, called The Asian Renovation of Biracial Buddy Action, it explores the racial, ethnic, and national myths of action movies, especially from the 1990s and the early 2000s. It uses slogans, parallelism, metaphors, and allusions. So Gates defines the term buddy cop as the typical Asian lead that is cast alongside the opposite race co-star, and the slogan is mentioned multiple times throughout to compare Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker in the Rush Hour series, or Jet Li and Aaliyah in Romeo Must Die, or Chow Yun-fat with Mark Wahlberg in The Corruptor. So once again, slogan, parallelism, metaphors, and allusions were all made throughout this essay. And that is it for vlog number 9. Thank you.